The Classic TV channel is your happy trails to golden oldies television from the 1940s through the formative years of the 1950s and 60s. Enjoy restored TV shows Mickey Rooney Show, Groucho Marx, Trouble with Father, Terry and the Pirates, One Step Beyond, Beverly Hillbillies, Bonanza, The Lucy Show, Dick Van Dyke, Annie Oakley, Ozzie and Harriet, The Howdy Doody Show, and many, many more. Binge your night away. So return with us now to those golden days of yesteryear.
The sea is many things to many people. Some live on it, a few live under it. Russ Lowell and Chris Walters were deep-sea divers. The three of us had been friends for a long time. I hadn't seen them for a couple of years. Yesterday I received a wire from Russ. There was serious trouble. I grabbed the first available plane.
Russ.
Mike, it's good to see you.
I came as soon as I got your wire. What is it?
Let's discuss it over a cup of coffee, huh?
Sure.
Coffee. 2 coffees, Patty.
Any cigarette?
No, thanks.
Tyrus, what's it all about?
Remember when Chris and I saw you last?
Yeah, several years ago. Dominican Republic. You both had high hopes of salvaging a treasure of some kind.
Yeah, the old Spanish galleons of the Plata Fruta. 24 million bucks laying down there on the reefs.
No luck, huh? Sure?
No, thanks. We got in the middle of a hurricane out on the Silver Shoals. Just got out of it with our skins. Chris and I had to split up until we could get another stake. I came back and got a job salvage diving for the Navy.
What happened to Chris?
Chris got mixed up with a fast crowd. Got in a jam. Went to jail for a while. From there, Skid Row.
Skid Row? Well, I thought he was working with you.
He was until last month. I got us hired as a team by Atlas Steamship Lines to salvage a freighter that had gone down just off the banks with a cargo of silver plate. One night a pirate salver came in and lifted about $10,000 worth. With Chris's record and knowledge of where the wreck lay, he was the natural patsy.
Yeah. Is he in jail now?
No, I got him out on bail, but he's on his way back to where I found him the last time, Skid Row.
I started to cover the spots around Skid Row. I wanted to find Chris. I wanted to hear his side of the story. I was positive there had to be an explanation. Chris was a lot of things, even hot-tempered, but I was sure he wasn't a thief. I wondered if he was being framed. Then suddenly I thought about his record. I hadn't known he'd spent time in jail. Maybe he'd changed. Maybe he'd gone off the deep end. I figured I'd know as soon as I found him.
Hello, Chris. What's so funny?
A worm. A crazy cockeyed worm. Nearly 8 years. A joint like this. You walk in and say, "Hello, Chris." Just like that.
Let's get out of here.
Where are you going to take me? Uptown? Introduce me to your friends? Great. Real great. Chris Walters. One of those exciting deep-sea divers. Dives for treasures, you know. Except, it's going to be a matter of a few years off pretty soon. I got a little matter of jail to take care of again.
Now, wait a minute.
You wait a minute. I want you to let me work this out in my own way. It's my life.
Chris, did you
you were on that ship.
You'll mind your own business. You'll mind your own business, Mike, or I'm going to lean on you hard. Thank Russ for trying anyway, huh?
As you say, it's your life.
Mike, you're going to see Mary and Joni before you leave.
Yeah. Russ asked me over. A little party to celebrate Joni's graduation from junior high.
Well, then you could do something for me.
Sure.
I was going to mail it, but maybe you'll give it to Joni for me, huh?
Why don't you give it to her yourself?
I thought we had that straight. You were going to mind your own business.
Chris wasn't a very convincing actor. I knew he hadn't told me the truth. Now I had to find out why. The next logical move was to find the man who fired the grand theft charges against him. Bill Basie, chief salvage engineer for the Atlas Company.
Shiftless bunch, these salvers. Seem to think as they live under the sea, they can make their own rules of behavior.
Is that why you filed a criminal charge against Chris Walters?
Not by a long shot. He lifted $10,000 in silver plate off of that sunken tub.
You sure it was Walters who took it?
He took it all right. You ever stop to look at his record? Look, the Aleutian Queen founded off the Green Banks in 40 fathoms. We spent 2 months locating her, and another 2 months breaking below the port where the stuff is stored.
And?
And in one night, somebody dives down and picks one whole section clean, just like he'd been there before.
You figure Walters doubled back on another boat and made the dive?
Well, it had to be him, or Russ Lowell. And Lowell was at the ice capades with his daughter the evening it happened. We checked. Tough break for Lowell.
Why?
Well, Walters and he were doing a good job. We were going to give him a bonus. And the way we get it, Lowell could have used it, too.
Go on.
Thought you knew them both well.
I haven't seen him for a long time.
Well, his kid was a hit-and-run victim. Broke her up pretty bad.
Joni. I didn't know.
Well, most of it's behind him now. Most of it but the bills.
Thanks, Basie. Thanks very much.
All right.
Oh, ice skates. Oh, they're figures.
Remember what we told you last year? As soon as you got rid of the crutches, we'd get them for you.
I'll be using them soon, you'll see.
This may not be so athletic, but since you're almost a woman, I think you'll like it.
Oh, perfume. Oh, Uncle Mike. Oh, it's such a nice party. It had been perfect if Uncle Chris had come.
Well, just because he couldn't come doesn't mean he forgot you. He asked me to give you this.
Oh, a brooch. Oh, a beautiful old brooch. Joni, dear, you know there is very little in the world that would have kept me away from your celebration tonight. And with this brooch, I send my love to you. Throughout your life, take care of it, Joni. It belonged to my mother. Love, Uncle Chris.
More coffee, Mike?
No, thanks.
You know, Mike, since our last trouble, Chris has been avoiding us. I suppose he's ashamed, but he shouldn't be. We all know he's innocent, Mike. Don't you think he's innocent?
I don't know. Joni thinks the world of Chris, doesn't she?
Oh, he spoils her. Makes her think the world's one big bed of roses.
Joni knows better than that. I saw Bill Basie today. He told me about it. Russ, will she ever use those skates?
We don't know, Mike. No one does.
You know, Joni will want you to sign her autograph book. She's made you sort of a legend to her friends, and this will be proof that you're real.
What's this?
You know teenagers, they save everything. Ticket stubs from the Ice-Capades. Oh, Joni and Russ have sort of a special date each month. Do something extra special, and last month it was the Ice-Capades.
I see.
Mike, keep me posted on Chris. We've got to help him somehow.
Maybe we can help him with that. Goodbye, Mary. Thanks.
Goodbye, Mike.
Bye, Mike.
Bye, Russ. Thanks again. Bill Basie was right. Russ had taken Joni to the ice show the night of the robbery, but I was positive the ticket stubs were for seats located at opposite ends of the arena. Maybe Russ had stayed to see the show, and maybe he hadn't. No matter which it was, for me it wasn't going to have a happy ending, because either Chris was guilty or Russ had lied. The following morning I went to the arena. The ticket locations were opposite one another, and I went to several doctors and a couple of hospitals. With each visit I learned a little more, until finally all the pieces fell into shape. I understood now why Chris had told me to mind my own business, and in a way I wished I had. Now it was too late. Come in.
Mike, I thought I told you to lay off. What do you want now?
I want to ask you something. You're pretty fond of Joni, aren't you?
Like she was my own kid.
Is that why you're playing patsy for Russ?
So long, Mike. Next time you're in town, maybe we can get together.
Russ did go to that show with Joni, all right. But they were sitting half a block apart. He could have left, got that silver, and been back by the end of the performance.
Don't make me sorry I ever knew you.
Then I did some checking this morning. Hospitals, doctors. In the last month, all of Joni's medical bills have been paid. How did he do it, Chris?
Lay off, Mike.
How did he do it? Come on, fella. Sit down, huh? You haven't answered my question. How did he do it?
You weren't here. You don't know what it was like for Russ and Mary those 2 years. Joni was an active kid. Real active. And then for weeks, months, all he could do was sit there and watch her waste away. She wasn't even able to talk or cry when she was in pain. I know, they told me. First it was their car and the house. Then Russ put himself in hock enough for 2 lifetimes. It still wasn't enough. Somehow he managed to get what he needed for Joni. Well, you saw her last night. She's on her feet again. She's going to be healthy and normal like other kids. Mike, don't you see? Russ was going crazy. He needed the money more than he needed life. Now do as I say, please. Let me pay him back in the only way I know how. Russ is needed, I'm not.
Is he willing to let you take the rap for him?
Mike, let me work this out my own way, please. When I go into court next week, I'm going to have a confession all nice and memorized. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Chris had figured the whole thing out his own way, and he was right. There wasn't anything I could do about it. The next day I headed for the school and Joni's graduation. I wanted to see Russ. I had an idea, and if it worked, Chris wouldn't have to sign a phony confession.
Well, Mike, what do you think of that gal of mine?
You should be very proud of her.
We are.
You should be a little proud of yourselves, too. Hasn't been easy, has it?
But it's been worth it. Well, you two stay and talk while I go get Joni.
Anything new on Chris?
Huh?
You're going to be able to get him out of this?
He's going to confess.
Confess? But why?
I assume because he's guilty. I'll have to get back to my hotel and start packing. I'm leaving on the 6 o'clock plane. Call me before I leave, will you?
Yeah, sure.
I kept hoping he'd call me back. But Russ just stood there staring. In the next couple of hours, I waited for some word from him. I couldn't believe that Russ wouldn't get Chris off the hook. And then someone knocked on my door. Russ, come in.
You know why I'm here, don't you?
Yeah. Want a cigarette?
No, thanks.
Russ, there's one thing that bothers me. Why did you send me that wire? Why did you ask me to help Chris?
Mike, I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. I guess I was a fool. When they picked him up for the job, I didn't know what to do. Never figured because he had a record, he'd become the #1 on the list. And then I thought about you. The more I thought, the more I turned dreamer. I figured you'd be able to clear Chris. I made another mistake. It didn't occur to me that in helping Chris, you would involve me. But I found out you'd been checking my medical bills, and I knew you had the whole story. You know something, Mike? I'm glad it's over. I wouldn't have been able to take much more. What's the next move, Mike?
Tell the police the truth. Yeah, I know it's going to be tough.
I'll take that cigarette now.
Sure.
Mike, everything's going to be okay now. I should have done it a long time ago.
It was over now, but I didn't feel very good. I kept thinking of Joni and Mary. And then I got an idea. I went to Bill Basie. I asked him if the $10,000 was returned, would he get his company to drop the criminal charges? I told him it was more important than anything he'd ever done. Basie said he'd do everything possible. I said he'd get a certified check in the morning. I tried to reach Ross to tell him that everything might work out, but there was no answer at his house. I kept hoping that Basie could convince his company to go along with me. Come in.
I hope you're proud, real proud.
Couldn't have ended any other way.
Don't tell me. Tell his wife and kid. Maybe they'll thank you for killing him.
For what?
I just got this letter by special messenger. Russ says he's also written one to the police, and he says a lot more. It reads like a last will and testament.
You know where he's gone?
Take your choice. Top of a building or in front of a heavy truck.
Operator line, please. The line's busy at the house. How long will it take you to get over there?
5 minutes by cab.
That'll do it. See if Mary knows where he's gone.
I told you I hope you'd never make me sorry I knew you. I think you have.
Operator, give me the Atlas Salvage Company. Here. Hello, Atlas Salvage Company. Is Russ Lowell there? Thanks. Chris sits at the top of a building or in front of a truck. He forgot the bottom of the sea. I hired the fastest boat I could get and headed for the Green Bank salvage operation. I kept hoping I wasn't too late.
What are you doing out here?
Where's Russ?
You're standing right on top of him.
Is he all right?
Well, he's been in 40 fathoms for over an hour. With his rig, 20 minutes is tops. He's got the bends for sure. Maybe he's dead.
Why haven't you pulled him up?
We tried, but he seems to be stuck. I got on after him, but I got busted lung, and these other monkeys wouldn't be caught dead in anything over backed up deep.
Get me ready.
Look, diving is not like walking in a park.
You're wasting time.
Piggy, get the other rig ready. Maybe it's too late.
We'll never find out standing here. The one big question had been, what did Russ hope to accomplish by destroying himself? Basie told me. The Atlas Company carried a $25,000 life insurance policy on its divers in case they were killed while working. Russ must have figured his policy would pay back the stolen money, free Chris, and still leave some for his family. Then I spotted him.
Lanyard, you see anything?
Yeah, I just spotted him.
He alive?
Held out here. Russ had lodged himself so no one could free him without coming down. He knew Basie had a bad lung, and that no one else was aboard who could dive. He was out cold, and I couldn't tell whether he was alive or dead. Bring us up fast. We'll have to sit it out in the tank.
You're crazy.
Make it fast.
Charlie, get the decompression tank ready. Piggy, get on that winch, fast.
Minutes seemed like hours as we started at 40 fathoms, and 30, and 20. I wondered if the nitrogen bubbles had touched Russ's brain. If so, I was bringing up a dead man. And then suddenly I felt blackness pouring over me. It was almost pleasant. And then I felt nothing. Sounds began to make sense to me. We were in a decompression tank. My lungs felt like they were on fire.
Okay? You okay?
Slowly the oxygen began to cool him. I looked at Russ. He didn't seem to be breathing. Then his eyelids flickered and he took a short breath. I said a quiet prayer of thanks.
Yeah. I'm all right. Lowell, did he make it?
Yeah. He made it.
I'm glad.
You're not alone.
Mike. And that's for all of us.
Bill Basie called today. He said the boss was softened up a lot by getting that check of yours. The old man isn't going to prosecute. You'll get it back, Mike. Every cent.
I know I will.
We'll hit it this time. We'll really hit it. That sunken fleet is still off the shoals, and we'll find it. You're a full partner, Mike. Your $10,000 is going to be a good investment, but wait and see.
It's already a good investment. Maybe the best I ever made. It was about 10 p.m., and I was on my way to Denver. I was sitting in the club car, minding my own business, happily cheating myself at solitaire. Blackjack on the red queen, the red deuce on the red tray, and I hoped she didn't notice me.
Wasn't there something wrong with that column, Michael?
Hello, Agnes. I didn't know you were on the train.
I'm with my husband, Frank Henshaw. His brother, Ned. Do you know them?
No, I didn't even know you were married.
A couple of years ago.
I must have been out of the country.
You probably were. I wasn't.
You seem unhappy.
I am. But now that I met you again, everything's going to be all right. Mike, we're all in trouble. Want to talk to you.
The last time I talked to you, you forgot to tell me the roulette wheel was crooked.
Oh, forget about that. That was a long time ago.
Gin rummy?
25 cents a point.
Go ahead, cut the deal. King.
Ace.
I love trains, ships, and planes, except for one thing. You can't get off them when you want to. Agnes and I had been playing gin for about half an hour when her husband and brother-in-law joined us.
Husband Frank, brother Ned.
Well, I didn't know you knew my wife, Lanyard. It was a long time ago. I've heard about you. From Agnes? No, she's never mentioned your name, have you?
No.
She mentioned your name to me. She said you live by your wits.
I do. Doesn't everybody? Who has any wits to live by?
Oh, don't pay any attention to Ned. That's how he is.
Obviously.
Could I talk to you?
I'm here.
Well, I mean, let's talk in private in our drawing room.
How far is it?
At 3 cars ahead.
That's too far. If we must talk, let's go to my room. It's in the next car. Oh, it's a family conference, huh? All right, come on. The Henshaws told me their terrible problem. Their father, who lived in Denver, had just died. He was worth a fortune. They wanted it. It sounded almost too simple. There's something here I don't quite understand. You mean your father died without leaving a will?
Oh, no. He left a will. He left everything he had to the housekeeper, Mrs. Kimbo. A woman that had been taking care of him for 15 years.
Oh, that's simple enough. What's the difficulty?
Well, the will can be broken, you know.
Definitely. Senility? Undue influence? The will wouldn't be worth the paper it was written on.
Oh. You'd like to break the will, huh? I'm sorry, gentlemen. This isn't in my field. Let's forget it, huh?
Wait a minute, Michael. You're not getting the whole story. The point is, we know Benjamin Henshaw had $250,000, but there isn't a cent left.
Oh, Benjamin seems to have been quite a spendthrift.
Well, my father never spent a nickel unless he got value received.
Until I was 16, my allowance was 25 cents a week.
But not that he was a miser, he wasn't. But when he died, he must have had every penny he ever made, plus interest.
I wonder if you Henshaws could be a little clearer about what's on your minds.
Look, Mike, he left everything he had to the housekeeper, Mrs. Kimbo. A house that isn't worth the money it would cost to burn it. Furniture you couldn't give away. And that's all.
What about the money he was supposed to have had?
Well, frankly, we don't know where it is. That's why we're talking to you.
Look, if you want to break a will, go to court, huh?
Wait a minute, Mike. We're only interested in the money. The old dame can have what's left.
My father took his money out in dribbles. In 10s, in 20s, in 50s. But we don't know where he put it.
I imagine you tried to find out, even before he died, huh?
Well, he never spent it on anything, not on jewels or cars or women. What happened to it?
$250,000?
Approximately.
Mike, maybe more.
I see. If you find the money, you'll cheat the housekeeper and divide it among yourselves, huh?
Well, I'm not sure that I like the way that you put it, but that's about it.
Mr. Henshaw. Agnes. Mr. Henshaw. In a repulsive way, your problem appeals to me.
Of course, Mr. Lanyard, we don't expect you to help us for nothing.
We'll talk about that later. In the meantime, would you mind leaving? I'd like to catch up on some sleep.
Agnes.
I knew that the Henshaw group didn't need my help, but I felt that Mrs. Kimbo might. I was going to check their story as soon as I arrived in Denver. I went directly to the bank in Denver the next day. Without arousing too much curiosity, I asked some questions. I learned a great deal. I learned that old Benjamin Henshaw had, quietly over the years, withdrawn at least $250,000. And that no withdrawal was ever for more than $50. The bank manager told me he was a wonderful old man, and that his account had been closed just a few days before he died. I have never trusted Agnes, and I felt the same way about her husband and brother-in-law. My next visit was going to be with Mrs. Kimbo, because I had a hunch that she didn't know that perhaps she had inherited a fortune. It didn't take long to reach her house. It looked like she was moving. I took one look at her, and I knew I was on the right side. Hello.
Hello?
Moving?
No. Not yet, anyway. Who are you?
My name's Lanyard. Michael Lanyard.
One of the family?
No.
Well, if you've got a bill, you can just leave it.
No bills.
Just a minute, please. Not that.
You're Mrs. Kimbo, aren't you?
I am.
You're Mr. Henshaw's housekeeper.
15 years.
It's a long time.
It's a reasonable while. Don't you imagine that these boys can handle this stuff without me sitting here supervising?
Oh, they seem capable enough.
When you get out of that car and walked up here as bold as brass, I said to myself, he's probably not up to any good. But there's a likely lad. A very likely lad. Would you like a cup of tea?
I could stand one.
With a stick in it?
With a what?
A stick.
Oh, a stick. Mrs. Kimbo told me she had sold the furniture to Gordon and Son for a couple of $100. But to her, it had a much greater sentimental value. I had known her only a short time, but I was rapidly becoming very fond of her.
Well, like I was saying, I was born in Sioux City, Iowa. Quite a long while ago. And I'd go back there tomorrow if I could, if there was anyone to go back to. Well, not that I'm kicking, you know, but, well, a person grows older and pretty soon everybody you ever knew's gone.
Yeah. More?
Just a splinter. After all, this is a special occasion, isn't it?
A special occasion? Yeah, I guess you could call it that. Salud de pesetas.
Salud y what's that?
Spanish. Salud, health, pesetas, money. In America, we have one word that covers the whole thing.
What's that?
One word. Luck. Good luck.
Well, hello, Michael. Breakfast.
We've had ours. Did you bring yours with you? Mrs. Kimbo, this is Agnes Henshaw.
How do you do? Hello.
Agnes would like to know what became of her father-in-law's money.
What money? Well, he never had any money. Leastwise, not more than $50 at a time, and usually less than that. I love you, Michael.
Oh, I'm sorry, Agnes. Mrs. Kimbo and I are that way about each other. Aren't we, Mrs. Kimbo?
I guess we are.
What happened to all the furniture?
Oh, the furniture? Oh, we sold the furniture. You find us in these humble circumstances because this is all that's left. A bed, table, stove. Oh, and a sink. We'll get along, won't we, Mrs. Kimbo?
Oh, I guess we'll get by.
Of course we will. Well, thanks for dropping in, Agnes. call in on us again sometime, will you?
Michael, I want to talk with you.
Excuse me, Mrs. Kimbo. Mrs. Henshaw is one of these women who won't take no for an answer.
Not very amusing, Michael.
You're not a very good audience, my sweet.
$250,000 doesn't mean much either.
Oh, but it does.
You found it already.
No.
And you let the furniture get away. Mike, how do you know one of the cushions wasn't stuffed with all that money?
Is that what you think it is?
Well, it could be, couldn't it?
Possibly. It might just as possibly be buried in the backyard.
She told you that? Mike, did she tell you that?
It's sad, isn't it, an empty house? Sad and empty. You can tell where the furniture was placed by the marks on the floor. The sofa was over here.
Michael, will you please answer me?
Oh. Mrs. Kimbo kept a clean house.
Will you please tell me what did that old fool do with the money? Did she tell you?
Why don't you and your husband and your brother-in-law try digging in the backyard?
Is it there? Did he bury it? Oh, Mike, don't be a fool.
I've been many other things. Why not a fool?
If you find that money, we can go away together. I'm not in love with Frank. He bores me.
In a way, Agnes, you bore me too.
Oh, Michael, I need the money. It doesn't mean anything to you.
Not particularly. I suppose it could mean something to Mrs. Kimbo.
Well, well. What is this, a love scene? Or a double cross? I thought I told you to wait for me at the hotel.
Frank, I had an idea.
Well, I got an idea, too. Now, get out of here. Now, that's for you, Lanyard.
As for me, what, Mr. Henshaw?
You're through. We don't want your help.
Oh, you don't want my help, huh? Well, that's a pity, because you're going to get it, whether you like it or not. Of course, you might not call it help. I was positive Mrs. Kimbo knew nothing about Mr. Henshaw's money. I was just as certain that I had found the old man's hiding place. I was, however, wondering how I could make sure that none of the Henshaws took it away from her when she asked,
Why did you come here today?
well, I know it won't make any sense to you, but I thought perhaps you might need me.
You're a very wise young man. But tell me, was I to need your help or your sympathy?
Well, perhaps a little of both.
Well, Mr. Lanyard, I've walked around the house with you. I've listened to the conversation between you and Mr. Henshaw's daughter-in-law. And I've tried to understand you because I think you're a very trustworthy man. Now let's stop fussing. What do you really want?
I'm glad you asked me. Tell me about Mr. Henshaw. What did he do? How did he live?
Well, I think he had a small government pension. As you see, he lived very simply. He didn't want much. He didn't have much. I'd have married him if he'd asked me, but he didn't. But I know that he'd never left this house and the furniture to me if he hadn't liked me.
What was he like?
Oh, he was a big man. Handsome, ruddy-cheeked, wonderful head of white hair. You'd never expected him to die the way he did. So suddenly, in a minute. He was an active man, too. Around the house, I mean. Always doing something like reupholstering the furniture, digging in the garden, papering a room, painting. He just had to be doing something. You'd never have thought he'd died the way he did.
What did you think of his sons?
Well, they were the only real family he had, you know. Frank, the eldest son, he didn't like very much. But the younger one, Ned, he didn't like at all. There was nothing really between them, and I think I tried to make up for it. I tried to make him happy.
I think that's what you probably did. About 5 o'clock that afternoon, I took Mrs. Kimber to the store that had bought her furniture. The Henshaws had followed us. I expected that they would buy the furniture, and that it would take them a couple of days to tear each piece apart. Then, if I had figured correctly, Agnes, Frank, and Ned Henshaw would make a very serious mistake, and Mrs. Kimber would end up with the money.
Well, of course, if we went over the whole place carefully, I could find everything that once belonged to us. But what's the use?
You don't know?
I suppose you're still hoping to find the money that he hid.
That's about it.
Well, either he was smarter than I thought he was, or there wasn't any money to hide.
You may be right. Here are some people who think you're wrong.
Living by your wits, Lanyard?
Now, where's the furniture you sold?
Here, there, all around the place.
Can you show us?
Mrs. Kimber's feet are tired. Aren't they, Mrs. K?
Yes, they are.
We don't need her, Frank. I'd recognize every bit of Father's furniture.
I'm sorry, but I'm afraid we're closing.
Well, you can stay open while we buy back the entire contents of an 8-room house, can't you?
You mean it? You want to buy all that furniture? All of it?
That's right. And we won't keep you very long either.
It's quite all right. I'll tell the manager. I'll get my sales book.
We seem to be in the way, Mrs. K. Should we go? Good hunting, friends.
We're wise to you. You're not going to double-cross us.
You were always smart, Agnes. While the Henshaws were busy playing treasure hunt, Mrs. Kimber and I began painting the town. We dined together. She said she felt like it was Christmas. She kept saying that I was wrong, that Mr. Henshaw never had any money. But she quickly added she was happy I was silly enough to think he had, because, as she put it, that's how we met. She had her first taste of champagne, and she acted like anyone else who has tasted champagne for the first time. In the next couple of days, we went everywhere in town. I think we danced at least 5 miles. Each night I expected to see Agnes and her troupe. And finally, they didn't disappoint me. I knew they had made their mistake.
I said you were a likely lad. I haven't had so much fun in 40 years.
Welcome home.
Well, gentlemen, what's the program?
Come on in.
Mrs. Kimber was in the kitchen with Agnes. I was in the middle of an unhappy family conference, but I was enjoying it.
You think you're a wise guy, Lanyard. It cost us $800 to buy that junk back.
Well, that's too bad. But as I remember, it had nothing to do with me.
I think we know you too well, Mr. Lanyard.
You're a smart operator. Where did Mrs. Kimble say the money was?
She didn't say. But what good would it do to you if you found it?
We can talk about that after we get it.
Now, where is it?
I don't know. Your father didn't trust you, so he left all his money to the woman who loved him. He would have told her about it if he hadn't died so suddenly. I think he hid it because he knew you'd fight a will leaving everything to Mrs. Kimber. He knew that if you could lay your hands on it, she'd never get it. You know something? You're never gonna lay your hand on it.
Brave men.
Oh, Mr. Lanyard, are you all right? This man's hurt. Oh, I'd better get a doctor.
Much better just to call the police.
What? What do you mean?
I think they'd be interested in assault with a deadly weapon. As for you, Agnes, you're an accomplice.
Lanyard, we made a mistake. I'm sorry. Can't we forget it?
Should we make a deal, Mrs. K? All right, we need a letter from you and Ned waiving all claims to your father's estate. want one from you too, Agnes. Mrs. Kay, we're about to become the rich woman old Benjamin intended. As a paper hanger, maybe old Henshaw didn't amount to much. But as a banker, he was the greatest paper hanger that ever lived. An hour later, I was happily watching Mrs. Kimbo count the money.
$1,000. It's true, isn't it? It's real. It's all mine. $250,000.
Yeah, it's all yours.
And you mean that I can really visit all those places I dreamt about in my silly dreams?
Your wonderful dreams, Mrs. Kay.
Oh, dear Benjamin. To leave me all this money. How'd you ever find his hiding place?
Well, part of the secret was in a touch. How's your gambling blood, Mrs. Kay?
It's always healthy.
Fine. I'll flip you for it. 2 to 1. Tails.
Well, I'll take heads.
Heads it is.
Oh.
So I owe you $500,000.
You don't owe me anything. I owe you the rest of my life. A very likely lad.